Hi everybody, this is Father Warner D'Souza, and today we are going to look at the text of Matthew chapter 22 verses 1 to 14. In chapter 21, Jesus has entered Jerusalem and we are now in the Holy Week. He has cleansed the temple only to return the next day to be challenged by the chief priests and the elders who wanted to know his source of authority. Jesus responds with 3 parables of judgment, and we are in the third one today. This parable is bizarre at all levels, if not scary. It goes from celebration to decimation in 7 verses with its tortured and twisted plots. And there are not one, but 2 of them. But remember that parables are allegories and not realism. And hence, you have to appreciate the absurdities to appreciate the parable. In a food-scarce world, it seems very odd that one would turn down any invitation, let alone one from a king. No one turns down a royal invite and makes light of the invitation, as we are told in verse 5. But an invite to tie the knot just got tied in knots. The invited guests kill the messenger and rubbish the message, inviting the full wrath of the king to burn down their city, even though it is his city. And then there is part 2. Those not meant to be invited are invited, but one of them is not wearing a wedding garment, so he is thrown into the outer darkness. Poor chap, he came in for a free meal and now won't even get a get out of jail card. So we need to suss this one out to understand it. The parable is similar to Luke chapter 14 verses 16 to 24, and one that is also found in the Gospel of Thomas, an apocryphal text. However, it is Matthew who added the second part of the story, and this is found nowhere else in the Gospels. You must put on a Matthean mindset, as I say each time when reading these parables of Jesus. His own community were kicked out by their Jewish brothers who lived literally down the road and made the Jewish Christians feel like outsiders. That's why when the king burns the city, it is referred to as their city, a reference to Jerusalem, which was burnt by the Romans in 70 AD. The invitation to the king was rejected by the Jews, who made light of the bridegroom. Remember that one of the titles for the Messiah was the bridegroom. Having rejected the call to celebrate the Messianic banquet, the Jews, led by their chief priests and elders, now faced the full wrath of the king. The burned down city of Jerusalem was still fresh in the minds of the Jewish Christians. Yet Matthew has a parable within the parable, which has no parallels outside of Matthew's Gospel, so it must reflect his particular agenda. Matthew wants to make a point to his own people, the Jewish Christians, who have now been invited to the very banquet which was rejected by their elder brothers in the faith. It may seem a bit unfair to us that the man without a wedding garment has a legitimate excuse for not wearing one. After all, it was a last-minute invite and the city had been burned down by their very own king. Yet Matthew wants to also remind us that the other guests did take the trouble to find one and dress appropriately. After all, this was the banquet of the king. Matthew is making a point to his own community. He wants them to understand that there will be no exceptions to following Jesus. Their standards must be high and their guard must always be up. The banquet hall was made available to them, and they have to prove themselves better than their Jewish brothers, for whom this party was really set up. The message must have really hit hard, for verse 15 tells us that the Pharisees went out and plotted to entrap him in what he said. I want to thank you for joining us as we continue with our reflections on the Gospel of Matthew. And if you truly like these reflections, may I ask you to please share this with your friends and families. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. Thank you so much.